Our next presentation comes from a man I met on a mission trip, and he was the surprise guest today in the front row. That's Marty Waldman. And I grew up an Episcopalian, wasn't always faithful. I don't think I ever had a sense, other than Episcopalians and Catholics and Presbyterians, how varied our world is when it comes to faith in our Savior. And on that mission trip, I stood in a room and prayed in tongues, and real words that I knew, with people from denominations, people who discovered their Jewish roots from 1492. It was an amazing moment, an amazing time. It made an incredible impression on me. And so, Marty, I hope that you will come up and deliver a little bit of that light that I found on that trip with Father Brian and the Toward Jerusalem Council 2 crowd. It was amazing. Marty Waldman.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege and an honor to be here. Brian and family. It's just kind of amazing. Once we were young, now we're old, right, Brian?
Natalie?
This is actually, Brian mentioned that we've known each other for about 20 years, but it's probably been closer to 22 years. And I'm sort of embarrassed to say this, but this is the first time I've been to Christ the King facility in all these years. And so I came specifically because this was Father Brian's retirement day. And I don't know, it just struck me as I was walking in that everybody was smiling and happy and laughing, and I thought, are they glad to see him go? I got a phone call from Brian 22 years ago. I didn't know Brian, he didn't know me. But a woman in this congregation had given him a cassette tape. Do you remember what those are? Had given him a cassette tape and I think a piece of paper. And that was Barbara right there. But she apparently received it from someone in our congregation, our synagogue, and I don't even know who that person was. But it was a cassette of my speaking about TJC2, about Toward Jerusalem Council 2. And once I gave that message in public, not only at our congregation, but I was asked to speak the message in a church. I didn't know what would happen, but then I got this phone call, and my secretary said, someone named Brian Cox, who is a rector of an Episcopalian church out in Santa Barbara, called, and I rolled my eyes and I said, oh, the nuts are coming out of the woodwork now. Sorry, Brian. And so, I don't know, I must have waited a week before I called him back, because I just thought, oh, do I have to call this guy? And so thank you for reminding us. Sometimes what you learn is the things you must do, not just the things you want to do. And so I felt like I must call this guy back. It's just rude not to. So I did call him back, and he sounded sane enough until we met for lunch in LA. And then confirmed all of my suspicions. No, I'm just teasing. Brian was significantly interested in TJC2, and frankly, we didn't even know, I didn't even know where this thing was going. It was just a vision that the Lord had given me. And so I met Brian for lunch, and there was one other guy with me. His name was Dan Juster. So the three of us ate lunch together. We talked about this TJC2, and Brian, can't remember if you verbalized this, Brian, or not, but I think what he was saying was, is there a future for me with this TJC2 effort, with this reconciliation effort, and this restoration effort? And it wasn't too long afterwards that 14 of us actually gathered in Dallas, and Brian was one among us. And it was the beginning of TJC2. When I say there were 14 of us, there were 7 Gentile Christian leaders and 7 Messianic Jewish leaders who got together in a room. And it was quite embarrassing for me because one of those Jewish leaders was from Israel, an Israeli guy. And I was at the time president of an organization called the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations. We had about 120 Messianic congregations under our roof. And so I was used to making out an agenda for our meetings. And I made out an agenda, this is what you're supposed to do when you have a meeting, right? You make out an agenda. I didn't know what we were supposed to do, but I made out an agenda. So at least the first thing on the agenda was prayer. That part I got right. But this Israeli, remember this, Brian? Ilan Zamir, this Israeli, picked up the agenda, read it, crumpled it up in his hand, and threw it across the room. And that was the beginning of our TJC2 group. Thanks for supporting me that day, Brian. Anyway, I've heard numerous times during the service today, and even from up here, well done, good and faithful servant, and I add that also from my voice, Brian, well done, good and faithful servant. But I want you to know, on one hand, well done, good and faithful servant it's an honor to hear that. It's such an honor to hear that. On the other hand, it makes you think, is the guy done? So just so you all know, we should be able to hear well done and good and faithful servant at the end of each season of our lives, and we have several seasons in our lives, and Brian is just entering a new season, actually, as he's completing this one. So I add my voice, well done, good and faithful servant, but I have something else for you, Brian. Now that I know Brian is not someone who crawled out of the woodwork, at least most of the time. I want to read this to you, Brian. This is from Hebrews chapter 6, verses 10 through 12. For God is not so unfair as to forget your work and the love you showed for him in your past service to his people, and in your present service too. God will be extremely fair with you for your past service for the past 25 years, how you've served the Lord and you've served his people. And he will continue to hold that position with you from this day forward as well. However, we want each one of you to keep showing, not good and faithful servant because you've shown all this good. He says, I want you to keep showing with the same diligence right up to the end. This is not the end. I want each of you, I want you, Brian Cox, to keep showing the same diligence right up to the end, when your hope will be realized, so that you will not become sluggish. I'm not retiring, let me just say, I'm transitioning in October, just like Brian is transitioning today. There's really no such thing as retirement in the kingdom of God. We serve the Lord until the end, and we serve him with diligence until the end. That's what he's asking of us. So that you will not become sluggish. This is what, jump in, as Marty Rice was saying, jump in, retirement's great. And I think it's great, I'm looking forward to it also, but it's a transition. Retirement doesn't mean now you do nothing. So you will not become sluggish, but will be imitators of those who by their trust and patience are receiving what has been promised. Don't consider yourself as having received it yet, Brian. You're still receiving, and it is still coming. And we all, you and I together, Andy, all of us together, will serve the Lord diligently and faithfully to the end. And he, in turn, will be faithful to each and every one of us. So, Brian, I've asked Andy to come and bring a gift. We have a gift for you from the ILC, from the top brass of TJC2, let's say, or So as you're opening this, Brian, there's a card also. You can wait until later, or you can open it now. It doesn't matter. But Brian, this is a handmade clock made in Israel out of stone that was quarried in Israel, in the land, made by a very well-known artist in the land of Israel, Israeli artist, and has, the numbers 1 through 12 in Hebrew on it, and those coins that on the outside of the clock are the 12 tribes of Israel. And so we want you to have that, not so much so you can mark your time, but to remember what Moses taught all of us when he said to the Lord, "Lord, teach me to number my days, that I might present a heart of wisdom to you." So Brian, it's not the end. Lord, may the Lord continue to teach us all to number our days so that we can present a heart of wisdom to him. Blessings to you and shalom, Brian.